In 1805, Ahmad was born in Yazd, Iran, the city of wind towers and the towers of silence of the Zoroastrian faith. His parents were Orthodox Muslims and very conscious of their position in society. They were very wealthy, and their boy was a little different from everybody else, and they were not happy about it. Ahmad was very attracted from an early age to mysticism and prayer and fasting and ablutions. He really felt that he wanted to know about the promised one, and he wanted to know the secrets of divine wisdom that other people wouldn't talk to him about. He, at the age of 14, was often found on the roof of his house performing ablutions and saying prayers until very late at night. He left home one day in about the 1820s, and he took a bundle of clothes and he told his parents that he was going to the public bath. Well, he never came home. He started walking. He started walking south. He walked for months and months, what turned into years, and he eventually ended up in Bombay, India, because he had heard that there were many holy men in Bombay, and maybe they could answer his questions.
He is the King, the all-knowing. He is the King, the all-knowing, the wise Lord, the nightingale of paradise, singeth upon the twigs of the tree of eternity with holy and sweet melodies, proclaiming to the sincere ones the glad tidings of the nearness of God, calling the believers in the divine unity to the court of the presence of the generous one, informing the severed ones of the message which hath been revealed by God, the King, the glorious, by God, the peerless, guiding the lovers to the seat of sanctity, to this resplendent beauty.
He He spent a lot of time there. He tried all sorts of different methods of fasting and prayer and bathing and self-denial. There was even a ritual he repeated where you say the Arabic phrase from the Quran 12,000 times, that there is no God but God, while prostrate on the floor. And he did that many times, and still he could not achieve what he was really looking for. So he started walking home again, and he walked all the way back up to Iran, but he went to Kashan instead of going back home to Yazd, and he began to work as a weaver of textiles. For years, he searched around and listened to people in this area of Iran, and he heard a rumor of a person, probably this was around 1845, who claimed to be the Qa'im. And then he met a stranger near his workplace. He had his loom set up in an inn in the city, and this gentleman was said to be someone who knew about the Qa'im. So he tried to get this man to talk to him, but he repulsed him over and over. And then finally, he told this traveler that if he would tell him the truth, he would follow it to his last breath. So the man seemed to realize that he was sincere. So he smiled, and he told him to look for a certain mullah in Khorasan. So Ahmad just left his shop behind, and he walked over the mountains to Mashhad. Exhausted and weak, he had to stay in bed for 2 months before he could actually go look for the mullah because he was so exhausted. He was thrown out from the mullah's house twice when he finally did get to go there, and the door was slammed in his face. The third time Ahmad went, he knocked and he said, "I will not go away. I need to know the truth." And the mullah, who was finally convinced of his sincerity, bade him to come in the house and sit down, and he began teaching him about the Bab and what the Bab's teachings were. After about 3 sessions of this, Ahmad became a Babi, a follower of the Bab.
Verily, this is that most great beauty, foretold in the books of the messengers, through whom truth shall be distinguished from error, and the wisdom of every command shall be tested. Verily, he is the tree of life that bringeth forth the fruits of God, the exalted, the powerful, the great.
Now, the mullah said, "Do not tell anyone about this. Go back to Kashan and keep it secret. Don't even tell your relatives." So Ahmad did this, and he had to at the time because Persia had lies and spies and slander and violence everywhere directed against the Babis, as the ruling divine hierarchy did not appreciate these teachings at all and wanted to wipe out this new sect. So through whispers and careful questioning, he discovered that there was another person who was following the Bab in Kashan, and this gentleman's name was Haji Mirza Jani, and he was the only other Babi in town. So these two men lived as great friends, and one day Mirza Jani told Ahmad that he could arrange for him to meet the Bab, because the Bab was being conducted by the royal guards through Iran to move from one prison to another. And Mirza Jani had arranged for the Bab to stay in his house for a few days. And so Ahmad got to meet the Bab in person, and he was so delighted and just filled with confirmations when he saw this beautiful young Syed who was full of radiance and grandeur and yet very gentle and meek. And the next day, after the mullahs all asked the Bab questions, one of the servants to whom the Bab had given his own cup of tea came to Ahmad and he said, "You know, my master didn't understand anything of what was going on, but I know there is something special about the Bab. Please teach me about him." And so Ahmad taught this young man, and he became the third Babi, and they began to teach others, and the community grew and grew.
O Ahmad, bear thou witness that verily he is God, and there is no God but him, the King, the Protector, the Incomparable, the King, the Omnipotent, and that the one whom he hath sent forth by the name of Ali was the true one from God, to whose commands we are all conforming.
Say, O people,
Be obedient to the ordinances of God, which have been enjoined in the Bayan by the glorious, the wise one. Verily, he is the King of the messengers, and his book is the mother book. Did he but know? Did he but know? Did he but know?
Now, the king and the divines got together, and they instigated mobs to go and look for the Babi families. And when they did, they would demolish the house, they would steal all their possessions, and they began to murder entire families or throw people in prison just for being Babis. And it got so bad that Ahmad's family dispersed, and he hid in a wind tower in a friend's home, and those friends fed him and gave him water for 40 days. But he couldn't live like that. And he had heard that there were a group of exiled Babis in Iraq. So he, one night, climbed down out of the wind tower, and they gave him provisions, and he walked all the way to Iraq. He made it to Baghdad, and there he met up with the exiled Babis, and it turned out that Bahá'u'lláh had gotten out of the black pit of Tehran, where he had been imprisoned by the Shah with a number of other Babis, and he had also been there for a while, but then went to live as a hermit because of disturbances and disagreements between the Babi exiles, particularly stirred up by his brother Mirza Yahya. So when he came back, that's about the time that Aḥmad had moved, or finally made it to Iraq on foot, and he was delighted to meet Bahá'u'lláh. And Bahá'u'lláh allowed him to set up his loom and live in an outer compartment of his own house. So he got to spend 6 years there, all during that time when Bahá'u'lláh was revealing the hidden words and the 7 valleys and the Kitabi Gan. Can you imagine being there at night with a number of other friends and Babis and listening to Baha'u'lláh talk about these incredible holy writings. I just can't imagine how wonderful it must have been.
Thus doth the nightingale utter his call unto you. From this prison he hath but to deliver this clear message, this clear message. Whosoever desireth, let him turn aside from this counsel, and whosoever desireth, let him choose, let him choose the path to his Lord. O people, if ye deny these verses, by what proof have ye believed in God? Produce it, produce it, O assemblage of false ones, nay, by the one in whose hand is my soul, they are not and never shall be able to do this, even should they combine to assist one another.
1863, of course, all that changed because the Sultan of the Turkish Empire decided to break up the exiles because they were having way too much influence and gaining many, many adherents. And he sent Baha'u'lláh to Istanbul, and all of his family and most of the Babis in town. But Baha'u'lláh asked Aḥmad to stay behind and take care of the remainders and to keep teaching the faith. And this was about the time that Baha'u'lláh revealed that he was him whom God shall make manifest, the manifestation of God that the Bab had predicted was coming, who would be universal for the whole world, for all the peoples of the world, and that his teachings would completely revolutionize religion and remake the structure of the world as we know it. And so Aḥmad was very sad, but he obeyed what Baha'u'lláh said, and he stayed behind. But after a few years, he was so desperate for the presence of Baha'u'lláh, and he had heard that Baha'u'lláh was in Adrianople, which is in western Turkey, and he started walking there. When he reached Istanbul, on the way to Adrianople, he got a letter from Baha'u'lláh. And in that letter was what we now know as the Tablet of Ahmad. Now, Aḥmad called it the Tablet of the Nightingale of Paradise. He had also had a letter that instructed Aḥmad to go to Persia, find the Babis, and give them the glad tidings of the coming of the promised one, Baha'u'lláh. That Baha'u'lláh was him whom God would make manifest, as the Bab foretold. And of course, he did that. Especially after reading and chanting his tablet, he realized that what the tablet had in it were instructions of what it's like to be an individual follower of Baha'u'lláh, and how to be obedient, and how to deal with difficulties and attacks and rejection and physical injury from people who don't want to hear what you have to say, and how what a great reward it is to be courageous and be persistent and obey God.
Forget not my bounties while I am absent. Oh, Ahmad, forget not my bounties while I am absent. While I am absent. Remember my days during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. Remember my days during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. And be thou so steadfast in my love that thy heart shall not waver, even if the swords of the enemy's rain goes upon thee, upon thee. And all the heavens and the earth arise against thee, against thee. And all the heavens and the earth arise against thee, against thee. Remember my days during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. Remember my days during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. And be thou so steadfast in my love that thy heart shall not waver, even if the swords of the enemy's rain goes upon thee, upon thee. And all the heavens and the earth arise against me, against thee. And all the heavens and the earth arise against thee, against thee, against thee. Remember my days during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. Be thou as a flame of fire to my enemies, and a river of life eternal to my loved ones. Be thou as a flame of fire to my enemies, and a river of life eternal to my loved ones. Oh, Ahmad, oh, those who doubt. Be thou as a flame of fire to my enemies, and a river of life eternal to my loved ones. Be thou as a flame of fire to my enemies, and a river of life eternal to my loved ones. Oh, Ahmad, oh, Ahmad, oh, Ahmad, and be not of those who doubt, be not of those who doubt, be not of those who doubt, be not of those who doubt.
Oh, Ahmad, if thou art overtaken by affliction in my path, or degradation for my sake, be not thou troubled thereby. Rely upon God, thy God and the Lord of thy fathers. Rely upon God, thy God and the Lord of thy fathers. If thou art overtaken by affliction in my path, if thou art overtaken by affliction in my path, rely upon God, thy God and the Lord of thy fathers. Rely upon God and thy God, Lord of thy fathers. Oh, Ahmad.
And so he traveled all over Persia for years and years at great risk. One time when he was imprisoned by an officer of the king, this young officer really grew to admire Aḥmad. And even though he was told to try to get him to recant, and he would try every day and go speak to Aḥmad, and Aḥmad would not do it, of course, and he would teach this young man about the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh. One day, the officer went, and he was very upset because his wife was deathly ill. And he told Aḥmad, if my wife is healed, I will release you. And after 3 days, his wife was well. And so he took Aḥmad to the city gate of Tehran, because that's where he was imprisoned, and he set him free, even though he knew that he very well could not only lose his position, but be imprisoned or murdered himself for what he had done. So eventually, Aḥmad found and joined his daughter in Tehran and was united with his orphaned grandson, Jamal, who was the son of his son, who had died trying to flee the Babi pogroms.
For the people are wandering in the paths of delusion, bereft of discernment to see God words, thus have we found them, as thou also dost witness. Thus have their superstitions become veils between them and their own hearts, and kept them from the path of God, the exalted, the great. Be thou assured in thyself that verily he who turns away from this beauty hath also turned away from the messengers of the past, and showeth pride towards God. From all eternity to all eternity, 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 from all eternity to all eternity.
When Ahmad passed away in 1905, which is 100 years, some people say Ahmad lived to be 113. We don't really know, but he lived to be a very old man. But when he passed away, he had given his original tablet in the hand of Bahá'u'lláh to his grandson, Jamal. And then Jamal, a few years later, gave it to the hand of the Zivar. And the hand of the Zivar presented it to the archives of the Baha'is of America in 1953, when the temple at Wilmette was first opened to the world.
Learn well this tablet. Learn well this tablet. Learn well this tablet. Oh, Ahmad, chant it during thy day.
Remember my day.
Withhold not thyself. Withhold not thyself. Withhold not thyself therefrom, for verily God hath ordained for the one who chants it the reward of 100 martyrs, and the service in both worlds. These favors have we bestowed upon thee as a bounty on our part, and a mercy from our presence, that thou mayest be of those who are grateful. My God, should one who is in affliction or grief read this tablet with absolute sincerity, God will dispel his sadness, solve his difficulties, and remove his afflictions.
And that's my story.
Verily, He is the merciful, the compassionate. Praise be to God, the Lord of all the worlds.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We're getting close to finishing this pen. We're going to do a lot of sanding. As you can see there, I just adjusted the belt, turned the speed way down. This is going to be somewhere between 7, maybe 800 revolutions per minute, whereas when I'm actually turning the pen, it can be up in the 2,000 range. Oh, it's going really, really fast. So this is much slower. Really using this sandpaper now. This is 150 grit sandpaper. Using this to find the final shape and get it, we get it real close with the tool, but I don't let that be the final shape. I use the sandpaper to really cut it down to just exactly the same size as the bushings that are next to it. So that's kind of why they're there, really helping me refine just the right sizes, and then I'm getting rid of any ridges. So now I'm indicating I'm moving on to the next grit. This is going to be 240. So I like to, we're going to work our way up through a couple of different grits just to really smooth it out and make it really soft and nice to the touch. These next few grits are going to be a lot quicker. The 150s, really for shaping this now. It's just kind of taking out the scratches from the 150. Next we'll move on in a second to 320. That will be used primarily to get rid of the scratches from the 220 or 240. And after that we'll move to 400, and then we'll finish it with 600. So you can kind of get a sense here. I'm moving the sandpaper in a circular motion. I don't want to get lines from the sandpaper because the wood itself is moving in circular motion. So I want to then move the sandpaper again to minimize any lines cutting into the wood. You may see occasionally too where I'm tapping out the sandpaper trying to clear it out. They do get clogged over time, and using all these different woods, some of those woods clog the sandpaper a little bit quicker than others. See, now we're just, we're still going on. We're working through our different grits. We go to 400 and then finish with 600. So stay tuned for the next step, which I think is applying finish.
Bahá'u'lláh